But zoning is amazing when you combine it with mentoring, because sometimes clients will have a jumbled mind where they're not actually thinking through something clearly. And the way that we think is what shapes our perception of our circumstances and what is really going on. So I'm just going to adjust my seating here. I love to use some really simple mentoring techniques, and I'm going to share a couple of them with you today. So the first one that I want to share with you is the 5 whys. You're going to want to use the 5 whys when they're feeling something or they're believing something and they really don't know why. The 5 whys gets them to really dig down to understand what is happening at the core. And so when they say that they had this reaction, then I'll ask why. And they'll say why, and they'll say, oh, because it causes me to feel this and this. And then I'll say, why? And then they'll tell me, well, it means this. And then I'll say, why? And it gets them to really think. And then they'll be like, well, it's that because of this reason and this reason. And then I'll say, well, why? And a lot of times it gets down to, well, I'm not worthy of love because I disappoint somebody, or whatever it might be. But the 5 whys is a great way to get down to the root very quickly of why they are feeling or thinking some way. Awesome. So that's number 1. Number 2, as far as mentoring goes, is I call this the work. But this was taken from Byron Katie, and I learned it from somebody else who learned it from Byron Katie. So I actually have not read her book. But this is amazing for beliefs that come up. So let's say a belief comes up that I am not enough. So if the belief that comes up that I am not enough, this is how I would go about something like that. First I ask, is it true? And they'll usually say, well, no, but, no, I know it's not true, but something like that. And they'll say, okay, well, does it feel true? And I'll say, well, yeah, it feels true. And I'll say, well, do you know this to be absolute truth, no exception? And they'll say, well, no, it's not that. And I'll say, okay, perfect. So then I ask this. When you believe this to be true, how does it impact you? And they'll go into how this impacts them. And well, I tend to feel stressed out or overwhelmed, or I feel uptight and I start to disconnect. And then I'll ask some other questions very similar to this. How does this impact your relationships? How does this impact your results? If you keep thinking this, how is it going to create the outcome that you want? And normally they'll say that it won't and how it's impacting them negatively. And I follow it with this. If you were to wake up tomorrow and you totally forgot this belief, what would that feel like? What would that look like in your day? And they usually say something like, oh, it's very freeing. I feel so much better. I would feel more relaxed. I would connect with other people better. I would go for my dreams. But if they have a hard time, like, well, I don't know even what that's like, then I say, okay, let's wake up, say, you wake up on a different planet, it's the same you, yeah, so I'll say like, oh, well, let's just say like Karen on a whole new planet, on a whole different planet, just never believed this, what would it be like for her? And then they can go into it a little bit more easily. I'm going to say perfect. Okay, so let's turn this around. And then I have them pick 2 or 3 statements that really combat the first negative belief that we were working on. Now, this process does take a little bit longer, so if you're doing this in a foot zone, you probably want to start towards like the middle of the right foot to like, you probably want to give about 20 to 25 minutes for this process. So you want to be able to time this right before you go into this particular one. And so sometimes I'll start it like at the beginning of the left foot, so that way I can like really finish with my client on a very positive note. So that is one of my goals, is to help them work through, when I'm doing some mentoring in it, I'm helping them work through the yuck, and sometimes there might be tears and other things might come up, and I just kind of like just stay focused on what is the priority that I really need to address. And then I want to allow 5 or 10 minutes at the end to really leave them feeling very relaxed, very positive, very bright, and very, very much at peace. So hopefully that helps with 2 mentoring techniques that I have found very helpful during the foot zone.